The doctors said she wouldn't make it past 3 months. A billionaire's only daughter, just 9 years old, dying slowly in a mansion that felt more like a tomb. Her father spent millions on treatments, flew in specialists from around the world, but nothing worked. She grew weaker every day. Then a housekeeper arrived, a woman with her own hidden pain. She wasn't supposed to find anything. She was just there to clean and stay quiet. But sometimes the truth doesn't wait for permission. What she uncovered in that house didn't just save a life. It exposed something so twisted, so carefully hidden, that even the father didn't see it coming. Before we dive into this story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a like on this video. And please, comment below and tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from you. David Sterling used to be one of the most powerful men in the country. He built an empire from nothing. Real estate, technology, investments. His name was on buildings in 3 different cities. People respected him. Some feared him. He had the kind of success that most people only dreamed about. But success doesn't protect you from tragedy. 5 years ago, David's wife died in a car accident. It happened on a rainy night. She was coming home from a charity event. The roads were slick. A truck ran a red light. She didn't survive. David was never the same after that. He stopped attending board meetings. He stepped back from his companies. He let his business partners handle everything. All he cared about now was his daughter, Emma. She was only 4 years old when her mother died. Too young to fully understand what had happened, but old enough to feel the emptiness. Emma had always been a quiet child, even before the tragedy. But after losing her mother, she became almost invisible. She stopped asking questions. She stopped playing with her toys. She would sit in her room for hours, staring out the window, saying nothing. David didn't know how to reach her. He tried everything he could think of. He bought her gifts, hired tutors, brought in child psychologists. Nothing worked. Emma stayed locked inside herself. Then, 2 years after his wife's death, Emma got sick. It started with tiredness. She didn't want to eat. She complained about pain in her stomach. David took her to the best doctors in the city. They ran tests. Lots of tests. When the results came back, David's world collapsed again. Cancer. Aggressive. Spreading fast. The doctors said they would try everything, but they couldn't promise anything. David didn't accept that. He refused to believe his daughter would die. He poured every resource he had into saving her. He moved them both into a massive estate outside the city, away from noise and stress. The house was modern, expensive, and cold. It had 12 bedrooms, a private gym, an indoor pool, and a medical wing that looked like a small hospital. David hired nurses to monitor Emma around the clock. He scheduled treatments, tracked every symptom, and kept detailed records of everything. But despite all his effort, Emma didn't get better. She got worse. Her hair fell out in clumps. Her skin turned pale. She lost weight rapidly. The treatments made her sick. She threw up after almost every meal. She couldn't walk without help. And still, she barely spoke. David would sit beside her bed every night, holding her tiny hand, begging her to fight. But Emma didn't respond. She just stared at the ceiling, her eyes empty. David felt helpless. In business, he could fix anything. He could negotiate, strategize, and win. But this wasn't business. This was life and death. And he was losing. The nurses came and went. Some lasted a few weeks. Others quit after just days. They said the job was too hard. The house was too quiet. The girl was too distant. David didn't blame them. He understood. But it frustrated him. He needed someone who could stay. Someone who could be consistent. Someone who wouldn't give up. He posted another job listing online. Housekeeper needed. Light duties. Must be patient and reliable. He didn't expect much. But he needed help. Sarah Daniels had been living in silence for 6 months. She lost her baby girl during childbirth. Complications, the doctors said. They tried everything, but it wasn't enough. Sarah held her daughter for only 12 minutes before she was gone. After that, Sarah's life stopped making sense. She quit her job as a teacher. She moved out of the apartment she shared with her boyfriend. She couldn't stay there. Everything reminded her of what she lost. The nursery they had painted together. the crib they had built, the tiny clothes folded neatly in drawers. Sarah packed it all away and moved into a small studio across town. She didn't talk to anyone. She ignored calls from her family. She spent her days sitting by the window, staring at nothing. She wasn't living. She was just existing. One morning, she opened her laptop and scrolled through job listings. She didn't know what she was looking for. She just needed something to fill the time. That's when she saw the ad. Housekeeper needed. Private estate. Quiet environment. Must be patient. Something about the word quiet caught her attention. She applied without thinking too much about it. 2 days later, she got a call. The interview was short. David didn't ask many questions. He just explained the situation. His daughter was very sick. She didn't talk much. The house was large and needed upkeep. He needed someone who could handle silence and wouldn't expect much interaction. Sarah nodded. She understood silence. She lived in it every day. David hired her on the spot. When Sarah arrived at the estate, the first thing she noticed was how empty it felt. The house was beautiful. Marble floors, high ceilings, expensive furniture. But it had no warmth. No life. It felt like a museum. David met her at the front door. He was tall, mid-40s, with gray hair starting to show at his temples. He looked tired. His eyes were heavy, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He showed her around quickly. Kitchen, laundry room, guest quarters. He pointed to a hallway on the second floor and said, "That's Emma's wing. The nurses handle most of her care. You don't need to go in there unless I ask." Sarah nodded. She didn't ask questions. David seemed relieved by that. Most people asked too many questions. Sarah didn't. She just listened. He gave her a key to a small room at the back of the house. It was simple. A bed, a dresser, a window overlooking the garden. It was enough. Sarah moved in that same day. She started working immediately. Her tasks were simple. Clean the common areas. Organize the kitchen. Handle laundry. Water the plants. Keep things tidy. She worked quietly, moving through the house like a ghost. She didn't make noise. She didn't ask for anything. She just did her job. In the first few days, Sarah barely saw Emma. She heard her sometimes. The sound of a nurse's footsteps. The creak of a door. Soft voices giving instructions. But she never saw the girl up close. Then one afternoon, while cleaning the hallway near Emma's room, the door was left open. Sarah glanced inside. Emma was sitting in a chair by the window. She looked so small. Her head was covered with a soft pink scarf. Her arms were thin, almost fragile. She wasn't doing anything. Just sitting. Staring outside. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. She didn't know why, but looking at Emma hurt. It reminded her of something she couldn't name. She quickly looked away and kept walking. But that image stayed with her. Over the next week, Sarah began to notice more. She noticed that Emma never left her room. She noticed that David spent hours sitting outside her door, sometimes with his head in his hands. She noticed that the nurses rarely spoke to Emma directly. They just did their tasks and left. No one seemed to really see her. They saw a sick child. A patient. The case. But they didn't see Emma. Sarah understood that feeling. After losing her daughter, people treated her the same way. They saw grief. They saw tragedy. But they didn't see her. So Sarah decided to do something different. She didn't want to overstep. She didn't want to cause problems. But she couldn't ignore what she felt. She started small. One morning, Sarah left a fresh flower on the table outside Emma's door. She didn't write a note. She didn't say anything. She just left it there. The next day, the flower was gone. Sarah didn't know if Emma took it or if a nurse threw it away. But she left another one anyway. This time, a different color. Days passed. Sarah continued leaving flowers. Sometimes she left a smooth stone she found in the garden. Other times, a folded piece of paper with a simple drawing. A sun. A tree. A bird. She never signed them. She never explained. She just left them. Then one day, as Sarah was walking past Emma's door, she heard a small voice. "Thank you." Sarah stopped. She turned slowly. The door was open just a crack. Emma was standing there, holding one of the drawings. Her eyes were on the floor, but she was smiling. Just a little. Sarah's heart nearly broke. She smiled back and said softly, "You're welcome." That was the beginning. After that moment, Emma started leaving her door open more often. Sarah would walk by and wave. Emma would wave back. No words. Just gestures. It was slow. It was quiet. But it was progress. David noticed. He didn't say anything at first, but Sarah could tell. He watched from a distance. He saw Emma responding to someone for the first time in months. One evening, David called Sarah into his office. He thanked her. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Sarah nodded. She didn't need praise. She just wanted to help. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah and Emma grew closer. Emma started letting Sarah sit with her. Not for long. Just a few minutes at a time. Sarah would bring a book and read quietly. Emma would listen. Sometimes she would rest her head on Sarah's shoulder. Those moments felt sacred to Sarah. She hadn't felt needed in so long. It felt good to matter again. But something else was happening too. Sarah started noticing things that didn't add up. Small things at first. Emma would flinch when certain people entered the room. She would tense up when the nurse brought her medication. One time, Sarah saw Emma refuse to take a pill. The nurse got frustrated and forced it into her mouth. Emma cried silently afterward. Sarah didn't like that. It felt wrong. She also noticed that Emma's condition didn't seem to match what David had described. Yes, she was weak. Yes, she looked sick. But some days, Emma seemed almost normal. She would laugh quietly at something Sarah said. She would draw pictures. She would move around without help. Other days, she could barely lift her head. The inconsistency bothered Sarah. It didn't make sense. One afternoon, while Emma was napping, Sarah decided to look around. She wasn't trying to snoop. She just wanted to understand. She walked through the house slowly, paying attention to details she had ignored before. She noticed that the medical wing had a locked cabinet. She noticed that some of the medication bottles had labels she didn't recognize. She noticed that David kept a notebook in his office, always locked in a drawer. Sarah didn't have access to most of these things. But she was observant. And the more she observed, the more uncomfortable she became. Then one day, everything changed. Sarah was helping Emma get ready for bed. She was brushing Emma's hair gently. Emma had started growing a little bit of hair back, soft and thin. As Sarah brushed, Emma suddenly pulled away. She winced and said quietly, "That hurts. Don't touch me like that, Mommy." Sarah froze. Her hands stopped in midair. Emma had called her Mommy. Sarah's heart pounded. She didn't know what to say. Emma wasn't looking at her. She was staring at the floor, holding the edge of her blanket tightly. Sarah put the brush down slowly. She said gently, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to hurt you." Emma didn't respond. She just climbed into bed and turned away. Sarah stood there for a long moment, her mind racing. Why did Emma call her Mommy? Was it just confusion? Or was it something more? And why did she say it like that? Like she was remembering something painful. Sarah left the room quietly. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. That night she barely slept. The next morning, Sarah decided to pay closer attention. She watched how Emma reacted to things. She noticed that Emma became very quiet whenever David was around. She noticed that Emma never asked for her father. She noticed that Emma seemed afraid of the medical equipment. Sarah also started watching the nurses more carefully. One nurse in particular seemed cold. Her name was Helen. She was in her 50s, efficient, but harsh. She didn't speak to Emma kindly. She gave orders. She handled Emma roughly. Sarah didn't like her. One day, Sarah overheard Helen on the phone in the hallway. She was talking to someone about medication schedules. She said something that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Yes, we're still using the same dosage. I know it's high, but that's what he wants. Just keep refilling the prescriptions." Sarah's stomach dropped. High dosage? But what? And why would David want that? Sarah knew she was stepping into dangerous territory. But she couldn't ignore what she heard. That afternoon, while everyone was busy, Sarah slipped into the medical wing. She opened the unlocked cabinet and looked at the medication bottles. Most of them had Emma's name on them. Some were common drugs used for cancer treatment, but others had names Sarah didn't recognize. She took out her phone and snapped pictures of the labels. She made sure to get clear shots of the dosage information. Then she put everything back exactly as she found it and left quickly. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat in her room and began researching. She typed the names of the medications into search engines. What she found made her feel sick. Several of the drugs were experimental. They weren't approved for use in children. Some had serious side effects. Organ damage, nervous system problems, psychological effects. One drug had been banned in multiple countries because of safety concerns. Sarah's hands shook as she read. Why was Emma being given these? Who approved this? Did David know? Or was someone else making decisions without his knowledge? Sarah didn't sleep that night. Her mind was spinning with terrible possibilities. The next day, Sarah tried to act normal. But inside, she was panicking. She kept looking at Emma, wondering how much damage had already been done. She kept looking at David, wondering if he was a victim or a villain. She didn't know who to trust. But she knew one thing for certain. Something very wrong was happening in this house. And if she didn't do something, Emma might not survive. Sarah needed proof. She needed more information. So she started digging deeper. Over the next few days, Sarah explored parts of the house she hadn't been to before. Storage rooms, closets, the basement. One afternoon, while David was in a meeting and the nurses were occupied, Sarah went down to the basement. It was dark and cold. Boxes were stacked everywhere. Old furniture covered with sheets. Files and documents stored in plastic bins. Sarah moved carefully, opening boxes and looking through their contents. Most of it was junk. Old business files. Tax documents. Personal belongings from years ago. But then she found something. A box labeled Medical Records Emma. Sarah's heart raced. She opened it. Inside were folders filled with papers. Lab results. Doctor's notes. Prescription records. Treatment plans. Sarah pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. She didn't have time to read everything. But she captured as much as she could. Then she found something that made her stop breathing. A folder labeled Private, Do Not Share. Inside were notes written in messy handwriting. They weren't from a doctor. They were from someone else. The notes described experiments, different drug combinations, observations of Emma's reactions, side effects, adjustments to dosages. It read like a research log, like Emma was being used as a test subject. Sarah felt rage building inside her. This wasn't treatment. This was abuse. She kept reading. The notes mentioned someone named Dr. Peterost. Sarah didn't recognize the name. But the notes made it clear. Dr. Rost was running some kind of trial. And David had agreed to it. The notes said David signed a consent form. He knew. He knew what was happening. Sarah's hands trembled. She took pictures of everything. Every page. Every note. Every signature. Then she carefully put everything back and left the basement. She went straight to her room and locked the door. She sat on her bed, staring at the photos on her phone. She felt sick. She felt angry. She felt heartbroken. Emma wasn't dying of cancer. She was being poisoned. Slowly. Deliberately. Under the guise of treatment. And her own father had allowed it. Sarah didn't know what to do. She couldn't confront David. Not yet. She didn't have enough leverage. She couldn't call the police without solid evidence. She needed to be smart. She needed a plan. But first, she needed to protect Emma. That night, Sarah made a decision. She would stop Emma from taking the medication. She didn't care if it made people suspicious. She had to do something. The next morning, when Helen came in to give Emma her pills, Sarah was there. She said calmly, "I'll handle that." Helen looked annoyed. "That's not your job." Sarah stepped forward. "I know. But Emma trusts me. Let me do it." Helen hesitated, then handed over the pill cup and left. Sarah looked at the pills. Then she looked at Emma. She smiled and said, "You don't have to take these right now, okay? Let's wait a little bit." Emma looked confused, but she nodded. Sarah pocketed the pills and threw them away later. She did the same thing for the next 3 days. Every time Helen brought medication, Sarah intercepted it. She made excuses. Emma's stomach was upset. She needed to eat first. She was sleeping. Helen grew suspicious. On the fourth day, Helen reported Sarah to David. David called Sarah into his office. He looked serious. Helen says you've been interfering with Emma's treatment. Is that true? Sarah stayed calm. I've been helping Emma feel more comfortable. That's all. David frowned. Emma needs her medication. The doctors prescribed it for a reason. Sarah looked him in the eye. What doctors? Dr. Rost. David's face changed. The color drained from his cheeks. He stared at Sarah like she had just pulled a gun on him. How do you know that name? Sarah didn't back down. I know a lot of things, Mr. Sterling. I know Emma isn't getting treatment. She's being experimented on. I know you signed papers allowing it. And I know those drugs are killing her. David stood up, his voice rising. You don't know what you're talking about. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him the photos. Then explain these. David looked at the screen. His face went pale. He sat back down slowly, his hands shaking. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he whispered, I thought I was saving her. Sarah's anger softened slightly. What do you mean? David put his face in his hands. After my wife died, I couldn't lose Emma too. The cancer was spreading fast. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. Then Dr. Rost contacted me. He said he was working on a breakthrough treatment. Experimental, but promising. He said Emma could be part of a trial. He said it was her only chance. Sarah sat down. And you believed him? David nodded. I was desperate. I didn't care about the risks. I just wanted her to live. He showed me research, data, success stories. I signed the papers. I thought I was giving her hope. Sarah shook her head. You weren't giving her hope. You were giving her poison. David looked up, tears in his eyes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was this bad. Frost said the side effects were temporary. He said she would get better. Sarah leaned forward. She's not getting better. She's getting worse. And if we don't stop this now, she's going to die. David covered his face. He was crying. Really crying. What have I done? Sarah felt a wave of pity. He wasn't a monster. He was a broken man who made a terrible mistake. But that didn't change what needed to happen. We need to stop the treatment immediately, Sarah said firmly. We need to get Emma real medical help. And we need to report Dr. Frost. David nodded slowly. I'll do whatever you say. Just help me save my daughter. Sarah stood up. First, we stop all medication. Today. Right now. Then we take Emma to a real hospital. We get her tested by doctors who aren't connected to Frost. We find out what damage has been done and how to fix it. David wiped his eyes. What if it's too late? Sarah's voice was firm. It's not. Emma is strong. I've seen it. But we have to act now. David agreed. Within hours, he fired Helen and the other nurses who had been administering the drugs. He called a trusted family doctor and explained the situation. The doctor was horrified but agreed to help. They arranged for Emma to be admitted to a private hospital under a different name to avoid attention. Sarah packed Emma's things. Emma was confused. She asked, "Where are we going?" Sarah knelt down and smiled. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can get better." Emma looked scared. "Will you come with me?" Sarah held her hand. "I'm not leaving you. I promise." They left the estate that same night. David drove. Sarah sat in the back with Emma. The little girl fell asleep with her head on Sarah's lap. Sarah stroked her hair gently, tears running down her face. At the hospital, Emma was examined by a team of specialists. The results were devastating. Her liver was damaged. Her kidneys were struggling. Her immune system was compromised. But the doctors said it wasn't too late. With proper treatment and time, she could recover. The cancer, ironically, was in remission. It had been for months. The drugs Frost gave her weren't treating cancer. They were causing new problems. Emma didn't need chemotherapy. She needed detox. She needed rest. She needed love. Over the next few weeks, Emma began to improve. Slowly. The color returned to her face. She started eating without getting sick. She started talking more. She even laughed. David visited every day. At first, Emma didn't want to see him. She was angry. She didn't understand why he let her suffer. But Sarah helped bridge the gap. She explained to Emma that her father made a mistake, that he was trying to help but didn't know the truth. She explained that sometimes people hurt the ones they love without meaning to. Slowly, Emma began to forgive him. And David began to forgive himself. While Emma recovered, Sarah worked with lawyers and authorities to build a case against Dr. Frost. It turned out he had done this before. Emma wasn't his first victim. He had been running illegal trials on vulnerable children for years, using desperate parents as his access point. The evidence Sarah collected was crucial. It helped shut down Frost's operation and led to his arrest. Several other children were saved because of her actions. The story made headlines. Housekeeper exposes illegal medical experiment. Billionaire's daughter saved by unlikely hero. Sarah didn't want the attention. She just wanted Emma to be okay. 3 months later, Emma was released from the hospital. She was still healing, but she was alive. David invited Sarah to stay at the estate. Not as a housekeeper. As family. Sarah accepted. She had nowhere else to go. And truthfully, she didn't want to leave Emma. The two had formed a bond that couldn't be broken. Emma still called her mommy sometimes. And Sarah didn't correct her. One afternoon, David sat with Sarah on the terrace while Emma played in the garden. He said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. You saved her life." Sarah shook her head. "I just did what needed to be done." David looked at her. "You did more than that. You gave her something I couldn't. You saw her. Not as a patient or a project. You saw her as a person." Sarah smiled. "That's all any of us really need. To be seen." David nodded. "I was so focused on saving her that I forgot to just be with her. I'll never make that mistake again." Sarah believed him. She could see the change in him. He was present now. He listened. He played with Emma. He laughed with her. He was becoming the father she needed. As for Sarah, she had found something she thought she'd lost forever. Purpose. Connection. A reason to wake up in the morning. She would never forget her own daughter. The pain of that loss would always be there. But helping Emma had healed something inside her. It reminded her that life, even after tragedy, could still hold meaning. Emma ran up to them, holding a flower she had picked. "Isn't it pretty?" Sarah took the flower and smiled. "It's beautiful. Just like you." Emma grinned and ran off to find more. David watched her go, his eyes wet. "She's really going to be okay, isn't she?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, she is." And for the first time in a long time, Sarah believed in happy endings again. Not because everything was perfect, but because they had fought for it. Because they had refused to give up. Because sometimes, the people who save us are the ones who needed saving too. If this story moved you, if you believe that every child deserves protection and every truth deserves to come to light, then subscribe to this channel. Hit that like button if you stand against those who harm the innocent. Comment, "Every child matters," if you believe no one should suffer in silence. And remember, sometimes the smallest voice, the quietest act of courage, can change everything. Thank you for watching Every Mind Stories. We'll see you in the next one.